welcome. We're thrilled to bring you this special event today, the 2022 USGIF and OGC Innovative Tradecraft Competition. As Sue said, we asked the community to show us how they'd solved some really hard problems. And I think you're going to see that they answered. We had 10 competitors or teams that answered that call, and you see them reflected here on the screen. Each entry was truly impressive. On March 16th, this year, just a few weeks ago, we held round one as a hybrid event at the USGIF Trajectory Event Center in Herndon, Virginia. Quick plug, if you haven't been there, it's an amazing event center. Come see me afterwards, and I will show you the best place in the Herndon area to have a smallish event. Today, you will determine the 2022 champion by choosing from among the 4 finalists. Before we bring in our finalists, I'd like to recognize our 2021 champion, Whitespace. Last October, Samantha Leung from Whitespace was selected by our symposium audience as the 2021 champion for her presentation outlining an approach to decision makers, providing decision makers actionable information about COVID-19 outbreaks. Let's give Samantha and Whitespace a big hand. As I mentioned, we held round one of the competition about 6 weeks ago in mid-March. During that, I was joined by Nadine Alame, the CEO of Open Geospatial Consortium, Nate Copeland, USGIF board member, and Jeff Harris, former USGIF chairman of the board, and a man that has such a long list of formers, but current good friend to USGIF and the inspiration for this competition. These are the criteria that the judges used to determine the 4 finalists. And these are the criteria that we're asking you to use when you vote for your champion. But don't worry, you won't have to memorize it. We'll repost them when it's time for you to vote. You may recall last year's vote was incredibly close, like really close, between all 4 of the finalists. And I think you've got your work cut out for you today to determine this year's winner. Now I'm excited for you to meet the 4 finalists. Each of these presenters will have a brief 7 minutes in which to introduce to you their solutions to intractable problems. We will bring out each of them for their presentations, and then at the end, we'll bring them all back to the stage before we begin the voting. So let's get the competition underway, shall we? First up, we have Annie Glassy, a mission analyst from Hawkeye 360. Let's please give her a warm welcome.
Hi, my name is Annie Glassy, and I'm a mission analyst at Hawkeye 360. At Hawkeye 360, we operate multiple clusters of low Earth orbit satellites to make radio frequency detections. And as a mission analyst, it's my role to work side by side with our customers to help them identify opportunities to integrate RF data into their analysis and in support of their requirement. And these requirements exist across a broad range of domains. In some circumstances, we might be looking at L-band mobile satellite devices at border regions, or we may be looking at GPS interference in Eastern Europe, or we might be using VHF marine radios and X-band navigational radar to look at the maritime domain. But if we take a step back and look at all of these different use cases, I often see that there is one common theme. The actors that we attempt to monitor are actively seeking to obscure their location. And as a result of this, we face an array of analytical challenges. But at Hawkeye, it's also our mission to use new and innovative data science techniques to overcome these challenges and make it more difficult for these actors to successfully evade detection. So today I'll be sharing an example of this with you in the maritime domain. On November 19th of 2021, Hawkeye 360's vessel monitoring algorithm detected that Captain Ahmed, which is a high-risk, nefarious cargo vessel, was dark off the coast of Syria. Captain Ahmed did not resume transmissions on AIS until November 25th, leaving us with a 6-day gap in positional AIS data. The challenge of locating vessels that are going dark around the world are not new for this community, but they are increasingly important and have become more difficult to overcome as vessels are showcasing new and more advanced tactics to obscure their location. However, in instances like this, vessels that are not using AIS are still using equipment on board to navigate to their location and to communicate with other vessels and ports in the region. And as a result, they're producing radio frequency energy. So at Hawkeye, we have the opportunity to provide a resilient form of collection in circumstances like this. During this 6-day period, we were detecting multiple signals of interest. And as an analyst seeking to determine where Captain Ahmed could have been located during this time frame, the goal is to see if this vessel could have feasibly created one of these emissions during its 6-day dark period. But in order to do that, we first have to hurdle one key analytical requirement. We need to understand as analysts where Captain Ahmed could have gone during this time frame. In other words, what is the realm of possibility? And to do this, whether looking at this region or at the Bering Sea or South China Sea, I have conducted a tedious and manual analysis. And this process involved setting up a list of competing hypotheses using potential speeds of the vessel based on open source research of similar characteristics of other cargo vessels in the region, and then turning to EO and SAR providers to see if we might have a relevant collection. But because EO and SAR are narrow and static shots of the Earth, and there might be hundreds or even thousands of vessels transiting this location, we are looking for a needle in a haystack. So what if there was a better way that we could overcome this first analytical challenge and more quickly staple an RF geolocation to the vessel? To see if this was feasible, I reached out to our data science team. The data science team at Hawkeye recently created the Opportunity Area algorithm. This algorithm produces hexagonal regions of opportunity based on factors pertaining to the vessel's speed derived from positional AIS data when it was available, also factoring in the disappearance and reappearance points of AIS, and in addition to that, it is also factoring in the bathymetry of the coastline. And as a result, if we were to take this algorithm and apply it at the outset of our analysis, we know right away that there are only 4 major port locations in Lebanon, Syria, and Turkey Captain Ahmed could have reached during this time frame. And it was in one of these hexagonal regions of interest that we found the vessel. So on November 23rd, there was a specific VHF Marine Communications emission produced in the port of Tartus. Hawkeye extracted the Mobile Maritime Service Identity Number, or MMSI, value from this emission. And this is our key finding, because MMSI values in the maritime domain act as unique identifiers for vessels around the world. Based on this insight, we now turn to see how we can corroborate this finding with other sources. Looking on the screen, you'll see an image, based on the image on the screen, collected by Maxar on November 23rd of the port of Tartus, we conduct further imagery analysis. And based on important factors of Captain Ahmed pertaining to the keel length and taper of the vessel, we assess that we believe we have a possible match. So now, as a result of this workflow, we have 2 independent sources of intelligence placing Captain Ahmed in the port of Tartus on day 4 of its 6-day dark period. And this is important for a decision maker that might need to understand or refute the position of Captain Ahmed during its dark period. Regaining custody over dark vessels is a complex and dynamic requirement. And because of the nature of this requirement, it demands a whole of community approach. So looking back at this workflow, it was a radio frequency energy, and one signal in particular, that sparked our ability to provide a multi-in insight. And by using data science techniques at key moments in our analytical process when we encounter barriers, we can do this faster and at scale. Looking to the future, we might wonder how we can tackle more advanced adaptations of this problem. For example, we plan to now use this algorithm with additional variables, such as specific vessel tracks in the region and weather, to consider if we can determine if 2 dark ships could engage in transshipment of materials or rendezvous activity in a given moment. Alternatively, if the same vessel was dark, could it have transited to multiple port locations? This is a global problem, and we sometimes need to encounter requirements where we might seek to understand where an entire militarized fleet of vessels in the South China Sea could be located when they're dark for weeks or even months at a time. Or if we find that a specific Russian fishing vessel is going dark just meters away from the US exclusive economic zone, how can we determine if an incursion might have occurred? Based on techniques like this, we expedite our workflow. So today and moving forward, our analysis is not tedious and manual, but it's efficient and accurate, allowing us to generate RF intelligence like this and share it with the community in a timely fashion. And as a result, we can work collectively to make it more difficult for vessels like Captain Ahmed to turn off their AIS and successfully evade detection. Thank you for your time.
Great job, Annie. All right. I think Annie just made it very hard for her fellow competitors and set the bar very, very high. All right, so let's go ahead and bring on our second competitor. Please welcome to the stage Michael Smith from L3 Harris.
Good morning. Wow, what a privilege to share this stage with these brilliant thought leaders who are really moving the needle. I would like to share with you today some of the innovative work that's going on at L3 Harris to address the difficult problem of all-weather persistent surveillance. Now, it's pretty well known that spaceborne persistent surveillance is a potentially powerful tool we could use to monitor our adversaries, and that if it's done well, we could deny our adversaries operational flexibility and even anticipate their future actions. It's also known that a promising approach to this problem is to combine synthetic aperture radar with optical data to leverage the best characteristics of both. This would allow us to work around the problem of daylight and weather. However, the differences between these modalities make this a seemingly intractable problem. So at L3 Harris, we've taken a new approach to this problem by essentially inventing a new virtual phenomenology, a 4D volumetric data source that merges EO and SAR data into a single usable data stream. So this data stream is intuitive in the sense that it allows analysts to treat the volume as a single data source. If those of you who are here on Sunday for the GEOINT Forward probably heard one of the panelists state that EO is for humans and SAR is for machines. In part, what this technology does is it makes SAR for humans. It's a way to make this technology more intuitive and more accessible. Secondly, this technology is optimal. It allows analysts to make use of the most recent available data without concern for the modality it came from. And third, it's comprehensive. It's comprehensive in the sense that it makes use of all of the available data, thereby increasing the cadence of collection and eliminating intelligence gaps. So by eliminating all the complexity of these different modalities and their different variations, this 40 GEOINT volume enables persistent surveillance and allows analysts to drive real-time actionable intelligence. So on the screen here, you see sort of an outline of the solution. I'm not going to walk through this architecture in detail, but what I would like to do is draw your attention to 4 key characteristics. First, a lot of data goes into making these volumes. And so we make heavy use of data standards to interpret the metadata and the raw bits. Second, we've achieved true precision registration between these two very different modalities, achieving unprecedented accuracy in co-registering them. Third, we've achieved true data fusion. So we use all of that data to build a time series volumetric representation in 3 dimensions of the surface of the Earth. And we do that by representing that region with voxels. Each of the voxels in turn can have a nearly unlimited number of attributes associated with it. Finally, the system is highly scalable. We make heavy use of distributed data stores to manage all that volumetric data. And we use scalable analytics in the form of containers, which encapsulate the analytics and make use of open APIs to access those analytics, which allows us to plug and play not only L3 Harris technology, but technology from other vendors as well. Okay, so let's take a look at this innovation in action. So for a number of months, we've been using commercially available EO and SAR data to monitor the activity at the Ingalls Air Force Base in Russia. This, of course, is where Russia manages their strategic bomber fleet. So on the left-hand side of the screen, what you can see is a single moment in time in a time series representation of this volume. There are a lot of things we can do with this volume, but one of the things we can do is use it to synthesize a predicted image that matches the upcoming collection that's scheduled. So in this case, we have an overnight collect using a SAR modality. We can match the collection geometry and generate a virtual image. When the real image comes down, we can do immediate comparison between the predicted and collected image, resulting in real-time change detection. In this case, what we discovered is several aircraft have moved, perhaps left their positions on the tarmac. This in turn generates an alert that goes out to human analysts who can follow up, and to an automated system which can in turn do things like ingest this additional data to update the volume, generate additional tasking requests as necessary, and send out reports to decision makers. I'd like to emphasize this innovation was developed as part of a collaboration with NGA under our CRADA, and also moved forward in conjunction with some programs we're doing for the Air Force. Okay, so we've looked at the use of the 4D GEOINT volume for change detection, but it's important to note that it's a flexible technology that can do lots of other things. Its key characteristic is that it makes complex heterogeneous data accessible to any analyst who doesn't necessarily have specialized training in a particular modality. And recognizing these unique characteristics of the volume, we've begun to develop a whole new category of Tradecraft tools, including things like volumetric analysis, volumetric time series, target recovery, automated target recognition, predictive change detection, cross-modality exploitation, and even optimizing tasking. The 4D GEOINT volume offers a forward-looking foundation that we think will provide a basis for a whole new family of Tradecraft tools. So this technology is great, but it will not receive widespread acceptance unless it's backed by a standard. So we need a standard both for the storage format and for the API. The 4D GEOINT volume overlaps somewhat with the emerging 2.0 MIPSI standard, but we're also aware that OGC has chartered a 3D GEOINT standard working group. We think that's a promising path forward, and we stand ready to support that work. So in conclusion, the 4D GEOINT volume really is a foundation to meet an emerging family of challenges. It's already been proven to shorten surveillance gaps and meet capacity scaling to meet mission capacity requirements. And it empowers analysts to exploit all the available data and to refine and expand the Tradecraft. It directly addresses several of the moonshot mission imperatives. Thank you for your time today. Did we do the fist bump?
Thank you, Michael.
All right.
Truly impressive work. And I am blown away by what we've seen so far. I have no idea how you're going to figure out your vote. But can you believe that in 7 minutes, he was able to provide us so much information about the work that they're doing? All right, so let's move on to our third competitor. It's now my honor and privilege to bring out Mauricio Martinovich from AWS Simulation Technologies. Let's give him a warm welcome.
Good morning, everybody. I'm so glad they let us use our metaverse avatars for these profile pictures. I look like 10 years younger. It's amazing. Anyway, thank you, everybody, for joining us here this morning as we look and explore how we're bringing together the latest in simulation, game, and geospatial technologies to help us prepare for the big one. But first, I want to take a step back and I want to zoom out because, and I literally mean zoom out, all the way into space, because I want to show what the end game actually is. At the end of the day, what we really want to do is enable developers and the geospatial community to have a sandbox for simulation, a real-time 3D geotwin of the whole globe that you could use for to solve a myriad of different problems. But how do we get up to this point, right? Well, let's start with our earthquake disaster scenario. This is a great use case for simulation for two reasons. Number one, I can't just snap my fingers and create an earthquake. That's not what humans can do. And number two, I wouldn't actually want to do that, right? So in the end, we're left asking questions like, how would we prepare? How many supplies do we need to ship in the event that this actually happens? Where should those supplies come from and at what rate, right? And so if this were actually to happen, it would probably mobilize an entire response on a continental level where all the states and cities would have to be helping out the San Francisco area, whether that's Seattle or Miami or New York, and we're talking about tracking millions of shipments of different types. And this is a very difficult problem to solve, but simulation can help us prepare for that. The issue is, if we were actually to try to simulate at the scale of the real world today, we're left with the confines of hardware and having to simulate largely on a single server with a single viewport into the world, and this could take days, weeks, or even months. So we need to do better. And in order to do better, we put together a team from Lockheed, Unity, and Here Technologies, and AWS to create a simulation application. Our friends at the Skunk Works were able to provide us with the simulation logic, where shipments need to come from, when should they be delivered, and in what quantities. And this was all loaded into the Lockheed GeoTwin visualization framework called BattleViz, which lives on the Unity platform. This is a great platform to use and help visualize because it allows us to use double precision coordinates, so we can literally load the entire globe into our scene and load in high-resolution 3D data sets like the ones from Here Technologies to help recreate the entire downtown of San Francisco. And now that we've put together the actual simulation application, the question becomes, how do you scale it up? How do you actually create and track millions of objects all at once? And that comes with some new simulation technologies that are aided with the power of the cloud. So what we have here, I want you to picture the entire continental US divided into 144 different regions. In each of these regions, we're deploying one of our simulation applications, and it manages everything that has to do with that region. And under the hood, we've got 10 AWS servers that are powering this simulation. Now, this sounds like a bit of divide and conquer, right? But in reality, what we're doing is creating a single contiguous world where everything can interact with one another and all the entities are moving throughout the simulation. And so we can literally go from coast to coast in something that looks like this. This is, of course, a time lapse here where each second represents about a day in the simulation, but you can see the movement of shipments, and this is Denver, Colorado, that we've zoomed into, and we'll be able to zoom into Atlanta. So we have actively simulating supplies being collected, being ready to be shipped out, and then being ultimately delivered to San Francisco, and there's our nice 3D rendering of the actual downtown area before the earthquake, of course. Now, what I want you all to focus on is simulation is a fantastic tool to help decision making, right? It's not so much that we're simulating an earthquake here. We could have picked wildfires in San Francisco. We could have picked flooding in Australia, hurricanes in the Gulf of Mexico. It's really about the logistics and the operations that goes along with helping us make the decisions, and simulation is a great tool for that. But really, simulation at the scale of the real world gives us the confidence that the decisions we're making in the virtual world or in practice are going to translate back into the real world, and so we can make more informed decisions. And so with that, we need to continue to move this technology forward. We need to continue towards that big, audacious goal of creating that geotwin of the Earth. And so how do we get there? Our next steps here. We're looking to actually continue to advance this technology and continue this project by upping the complexity, right? We want to add planes, trucks, satellites, ships, and actual people into the simulation to see how they would respond, because in the event of a real natural disaster, all of these would be brought to bear to help part of the recovery effort. We're also looking to create the ability to go all the way from the ground level, that 3D that you saw, all the way literally up into space, where we can capture all the domains in between. all as part of a single simulation, and to take this from theory to application, because we can use these frameworks and this highly scalable simulation technology for more than just disaster recovery, right? For the last 2 years, we've all known about the pandemic and trying to work our way through that, but simulation can help us make better decisions about how we're handling the next pandemic, for example. If I can simulate an entire city and its population, we can look at the effects of wearing masks or social distancing and how that might help or hinder the spread of the pandemic. And I've had lots of people asking me, well, if you can, that was 1 million entities that we simulated the first time, but if we can do 1 million, can I do 2 million? Can I simulate populations of 5 million, 7 million, 15? Sure, let's keep working towards that, right? And I would hate to leave anybody out. So as we work to get bigger and bigger with these simulations, we can also create these digital twins, getting back to that globe idea. And finally, we need to be ready to respond in a multi-domain sort of way, right? Bringing all the capabilities of across land, air, sea, space, and cyber together, and we need to be able to simulate that in order to prepare, because when we have the world at our fingertips, we really can be ready for anything. Thank you very much.
Awesome job, Ritz. That was truly inspiring and fills me with so much optimism. And again, your job just keeps getting harder and harder with each competitor. So now we'll bring out our fourth competitor. Last but definitely not least, Dr. Shawana Johnson from Descartes Lab. Please give her a warm welcome.
Good morning. Our warfighter relies extensively on communications and networks for forward deployed operations. Digital connectivity over vast areas is essential for mission success, and it is under a constant onslaught of attacks through denial, deception, and espionage. We must provide our warfighter with secure connectivity, allowing them to operate in a zero-trust architecture, all the while remaining undetected. Our country is in a fight, one that is probably more difficult to see than any other. China and the United States are in a competition over who will control the global information infrastructure, with 5G at the heart of it all. Our Defense Innovation Board recently stated that whoever controls this information infrastructure will dominate the world. However, China enacted a law in June of 2017 requiring Chinese citizens and Chinese corporations to require them to facilitate and cooperate fully with China's national intelligence services, including the backdoor installation of private data transmitted to the government. China is the current leader in sub-6 technologies and will most likely deploy the world's first 5G wide area network. The areas you see in pink and red on this map are there to demonstrate that China has that area of 5G network capability, which clearly covers almost 70% of the global land surface. In theater, our warfighter must monitor, share, allocate, assess, reassess, and manage spectrum. And they have to do all of this while under unbelievably difficult cybersecurity attacks, as well as malicious, nefarious 5G attacks, as well as handle the misinformation that's coming to them from local area. So what do? They collect more data because they have to understand what's going on. They have to look at everything. To what extent? What is watch everything? It's buildings, parks, weather, utilities, cell towers, data centers, construction, roads, venues, IP cameras, airways, cargoes, logistics, hotel infrastructures with rental car, retail activity. So how do we get all of this data securely into the hands of the warfighter? The answer is GEOINT Foundation Intelligence, where every bit of data has a precise geo-reference. If you were here yesterday, you heard General Clark state that we must provide the warfighter with open source data. Well, not only does this Tradecraft do that, but we also allow the warfighter to have secure transit over untrusted networks using a technology called scatter. In addition, we must employ the highest open source data standards and watch the constantly evolving communications and network standards as well. We have to do that for two reasons. The first is that we must provide accurate, precise insights of all this new data and current data to the warfighter. And we have to vet and validate all the misinformation that's coming to them as well. In addition, we have to perform at the speed of mission operation at the edge. Remember the map I showed you that had the pink and red showing Chinese domination over 70% of the global land surface with 5G equipment? You can assume they listen to everything, and you can assume they intervene in all of our warfighter connectivity. Descartes Labs government and Scatter Corporation have joined forces to provide all of this data and local area data out to the warfighter through trusted transport. We are proud to be working with CENTCOM and 2 other combatant commands to provide them secure, distributed resiliency of local data, all at mission, regardless of location. The in-theater technical view looks like this. It's a decision engine that takes in all of this open source data, cleans, curates, and normalizes it, as well as local data, combines that into precise insights, but then is moved through secure transit through untrusted networks to the endpoints where the warfighter can access it. But that's the technical view. The key to real success for this Tradecraft with CENTCOM and the other combatant commands will be when we prevent situations like the one that just occurred in the Ukraine, where a humanitarian exfiltration was taking place and networks had been infiltrated, and the enemy combatant discovered the location of the exfiltration and killed innocent civilians. This must be stopped. We must provide the warfighter with secure connectivity as well as open source precise data that allows them to inform the rescue teams for safe extractions without loss of human life. Be very clear. We are not going to stop China's advance in this 5G world. However, with the use of open source trusted data that moves with trusted transport out through the warfighter, we will give them the ability to scrutinize and to combat it. Thank you for being here today and for listening to my other colleagues, Annie, Michael, and Ritz. Thank you.
Really well done. Let's bring out our other competitors and give them all a big round of applause. All right, so here you have it, your 4 finalists. And I think that you understand why I said that you would have your work cut out for you. Each of you did a magnificent job.
It's my absolute pleasure to now introduce the winner of GEOINT 2022 Tradecraft competition. And this year's winner is Annie Glassy, Hawkeye 360.